Trump's criticism of South Africa's land reform policy. Introduction. Trump's position on South Africa's land reform. Trump's criticism of South Africa's recent land reform policy stems from his strong opposition to the Expropriation Act, a law aimed at addressing historical land ownership inequities from the colonial and apartheid periods. He contends that the policy, which permits the government to acquire land without compensation under certain circumstances, disproportionately targets the white minority, particularly Afrikaners, and constitutes race-based discrimination. His stance reflects a broader ideological commitment to prioritizing property rights, a recurring theme in his political rhetoric. Ideological and political underpinnings. Trump's commentary aligns with narratives promoted by right-wing groups that suggest land reform equates to genocide or the deliberate dispossession of white farmers. His claim that South Africa is confiscating land seeks to evoke concerns that the law represents an assault on white property rights. This perspective corresponds with his prior criticisms and policies, advocating for the protection of traditional property ownership models, viewing land as a limited and valuable asset, crucial for wealth and influence. He maintains that the reform endangers the economic security of a historically significant landholding racial minority, despite their relatively small proportion of the overall population. Criticism of the Expropriation Act. Trump argues that the law which permits expropriation in cases where land is classified as unproductive or abandoned establishes a troubling precedent for appropriating property without fair negotiation or adequate compensation. He asserts that such actions, even if intended to rectify historical wrongs, could undermine property rights and shape how other nations approach land reform or eminent domain. Critics, however, argue that the act functions within constitutional protections, including judicial oversight, and is designed to improve equitable land access rather than arbitrarily seize property. Implications and broader context. Beyond the legal details, Trump's stance is informed by his broader view of land as a cornerstone of economic power. He perceives challenges to established property rights as threats not only to economic stability, but also to the social order that has historically benefited certain groups. His rhetoric suggests that while South Africa seeks to rectify past injustices through land redistribution, these efforts could jeopardize the stability and predictability that secure property rights offer, a fundamental principle of his administration's policies. In this context, his criticisms emphasize less the specifics of South Africa's internal policies and more the promotion of an agenda that advocates a particular interpretation of historical justice and property ownership. Conclusion. In summary, Trump's desire to alter South Africa's land reform policy is rooted in his belief that measures like the Expropriation Act, intended to rectify historical inequalities, unfairly infringe upon the rights of white property owners. His stance is situated within a broader ideological framework that views land as an essential asset for wealth and power, perceiving any governmental intervention in land ownership as a potential threat to the existing order. This viewpoint resonates with his supporters and aligns with certain right-wing narratives, yet it overlooks the extensive history of inequality that the reform aims to address and stands in stark contrast to the constitutional and regulatory protections inherent in South Africa's legal system.